Israel is the actual operative of the American hegemony in West Asia. The presence of Israel as a bully, as an empowered, weaponized, radical society. I don't think it's right to call it a society. It's a collection of people from around the world. They're not even a society. So it's like a missionary, radical, brainwashed, weaponized group of people in the Middle East. Their presence bullies the region.
Hi, and welcome to Global Majority for Peace podcast. I'm Ileana Chan, and my co-host is Fiona Edwards. If you're new to our podcast, our mission is to build a global movement to challenge the US-led war drive against China, Russia, and countries in the global south. Now, before we get into our very special guest today, I have an exciting announcement. We are actually going weekly from this week. So next week, we will have another new episode. So please look out for that. And of course, if you like our work, please support us on Patreon and follow our links, follow us on social media. All the links are down below in the description.
We're very excited today that joining the Global Majority for Peace podcast is Ghadi Francis. Ghadi is a very prominent Lebanese journalist. She is the host of the West Asia Post and has been an extremely powerful voice against the US-Israeli genocide in Gaza over this past year. Ghadi, it is truly an honor to have you on the show with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, ladies. It's really very important for me to speak with both of you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Ghadi, for coming on. We really appreciate your time in this extremely harrowing moment. As you know, we're coming up to a year that the Palestinians have endured, absolute year of horrors as Israel, with the full backing of the United States and other Western nations, they have waged an all-out genocidal offensive in Gaza. These crimes against humanity have shocked the world. On September 18, 2024, the United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution demanding that Israel withdraw from the occupied Palestinian territory of East Jerusalem, Gaza, and the West Bank within the next 12 months. This vote was carried by an overwhelming margin. 124 countries voted in favor, 14 countries against, and 43 countries abstained. Israel has never been more isolated on the world stage. But in light of the recent events, Ghadi, how much longer do you think that Israel can defy the overwhelming majority of world opinion and continue its atrocities in Gaza, the West Bank, and regionally, now, of course, in Lebanon too?
Well, I think as long as the United States of America backs it, because even if not 124 countries are in favor, even if the whole world is in favor of stopping the occupation of Palestine and putting limits to the apartheid regime, and the Americans continue to fund and weaponize and veto protect them, they're going to go on. You know, I never thought that someone could televise a genocide and get away with it. The amount of indoctrination and education that us as a generation have received about the Holocaust make it unperceivable and not really fathomable to see it happen in our modern day on our mobile phones, and people would get away with it, and to see people parading it. So I didn't think that Israel was able to bomb all hospitals, all universities, all schools, and even refugee camps inside Gaza. Doctors, journalists, assassinate, educide everyone who's educated and get away with it and continue to be supported. And after all that, when Benjamin Netanyahu, the war criminal, gets to the United States Congress, he gets 52 standing ovations. So you ask me today, even if they are known for what they are, even if 124 countries voted in favor of Palestine, as long as the United States of America allows it, because the hegemony of America has already reached over Europe. I cannot say Europe or even UK at that point. Once the Americans stop backing Benjamin Netanyahu and the war crimes that the Israelis are doing, and they haven't stopped 77 years ago until today, until the Americans say enough, nobody's going to stop them.
Absolutely. And I mean, in terms of the scale of the destruction that Israel has been imposing, on Gaza. I mean, this statistic is actually from April of this year, so several months ago. So the statistic will be much, much higher now. But as of April 2024, Israel had dropped over 70,000 tons of bombs on Gaza, which surpassed the bombing of Dresden, Hamburg, and London combined during the Second World War. And as you mentioned, this is because the United States is supporting Israel. The United States has backed Israel with billions of dollars worth of weapons throughout this whole period. And these are the bombs that are dropping on Gaza. So what I wanted to kind of hear from you is, with all of its military might, its brutality, and its superpower backing, Israel hasn't achieved its goals of wiping out the Palestinian resistance, and it hasn't succeeded in driving the Palestinians off their land in Gaza. And I wondered if you could explain to us why this is the case.
If I want to give a little bit of context while speaking with you ladies now, ever since the colonization of this land started, even in the beginning of the 19th century, when I read these travel books that missionaries used to write, Brits or Americans or reverends that used to come to the Holy Land, they never took an understanding of what an indigenous person and the culture of this land is. They always came thinking that as white colonizers, they knew better. They never really understood these people, and this is why they never succeeded in actually eradicating their need to resist. The Palestinians and the Lebanese and the Iraqis and the Syrians, this is their homeland. This is not a land that someone promised them. This is not a brainwash Zionism propaganda fruit. No, I mean, I tell you for myself, I travel all the time in my daily life. But once war hits Lebanon, I feel like I want to be rooted. I want to just make a hole and be inside that land. I don't want to go anywhere when that land is under danger. I feel way more attached to it. And even my siblings that live abroad want to come back when there's war. The other side of that conflict, they cannot even fathom the sounds of rockets, although they have been missiles striking us as people for 7 decades. They can't even listen to their billion-dollar funded Iron Dome intercepting these rockets. They lose their minds. They are not willing to defend that land because it's not their father's land or their grandfather's land. They do not have ancestral memory, collective memory. They do not have decades and maybe centuries of inbred belonging to that land. We look like our land. Our voices, our tones, our dialects, our traditions are blended in the geographical and the cultural blend and history of this land. You see, so Palestinians have not lost their want to resist because this has not stopped being their home. It is not a preference. It is not a politics issue. It is their home. Somebody came and took their home. It didn't stop being their home. And even that somebody that took their home, they remained treating them in a more brutal way year after year in an apartheid system. They imprisoned them, they raped them, they denied them their basic human rights, they denied them the freedom to education, to water, for God's sake. They brutalized every single person and civilian. The doctors, the teachers, the kids, for decades. They do that to these people. They come and made a different way of governing that land. Maybe the resistance would stop. But if you kill all my family, what else do I have to live for other than vengeance? Do you know how many families have been wiped out of registry only in this past year? The amount of families that have been totally annihilated in Gaza. And now we started to taste that bitter medicine here in Lebanon. We have a whole family last night wiped out in Beqa and others in South. So do you think the relatives of these people will just, let me change my preference and go live elsewhere in the world? There's too much blood and too much vengeance, and the cause has been rooted too much and blended in our conscience, our collective struggle for liberty as peoples of this region, not only of Lebanon and Palestine. This is why the resistance will never end. Even if there are 2 remaining humans in Palestine, they will resist the occupation. Now, the Israelis know that. This is why they're trying to annex a whole population. If you still believe that lie that Israel is defending itself by killing tens of thousands of innocent civilians in Gaza, you're out of your mind. They're trying to eradicate people, not Hamas, because they know that maybe now, since they have a total chaos around the world and the Americans are backing them and everything, they can kill as much as they want and get rid of more and more Palestinians. This is why they target the infrastructure. They make it unlivable. They want to drive them away from that land and take that land. But for the first time in history, the course of movement has been changed. And now these settlers, these colonizers, they are being displaced from northern occupied Palestine under the rockets of Lebanese resistance. So for a change, they are being pushed away from the land now.
Yeah, we are definitely seeing a relentless push towards regional escalation by the Israeli regime. Earlier this month, Israel launched a series of terrorist attacks across Lebanon, weaponizing civilian communication devices, including pages, walkie-talkies, radios, killing at least 37 people and maiming over 3,000 people. Following this, Israel launched airstrikes in Lebanon, killing over 500 people in one day. I mean, obviously, this is a very personal and close to home situation for you, Ghadi, as a journalist based in Lebanon. Can you give us a little bit more insight into the impact that these attacks have on the Lebanese people? And in your opinion, will Israel's terrorist attacks on Lebanon and its aggression against other countries in West Asia trigger an all-out regional war?
First of all, you would be surprised at the amount of resilience and strength that the Lebanese people have. You'd be surprised at how the Lebanese community emerged in one large human painting of beauty and solidarity and empowerment. Thousands were rushed to hospitals, but tens of thousands rushed to donate blood. Some wanted to donate eyes or kidneys. We're talking about people wanting to donate one of their eyes to these men because they are more important for the country. This kind of sentiment emerged in the Lebanese society, and this is exactly what the Israelis wanted to strike. They want to alienate the resistance from its community by these kinds of attacks, to make the Lebanese feel that this community is a danger or a threat. On the contrary, the Lebanese gathered around that community. And also, in terms of the brutality of using human civilian technological devices to bomb people, this amount of warfare has been, like, it is not precedented in human history. So Israel dragged the world, like now every person who has a technological device around them in their homes, next to their children and families, are in danger. This is what Israel is telling the world. So they added up in their pile of atrocities, and they added up and making now every human their enemy, actually, whether you know it or not. Israel just told you that they have the ability to kill you in your home because they're spoiled like that and they're capable like that. I mean, I don't want to say that the human life and the human tragedy is not easy for us. We do ache. But we have been experienced enough in war to tell you that I don't know anyone who was broken that day. Everybody dragged a different kind of strength. When you are under the calamity, you really know your strength. And I think as a society, as a community, as a generation, we have been practiced enough. So I did not feel broken. I felt like the Israelis have massacred us like that. I mean, it's not the first time that they have technological superiority to kill us. I was a kid, I saw kids being killed in Qana. They were in a UN shelter. So the first time a war crime by Israel entered into my database, I was a 7-year-old girl. I saw 7-year-old girls being held in remains and pieces in South Lebanon. So as people, we have been killed like that. We have been killed in masses. We have been slaughtered like that. We have seen this happen to us before. So you'd be surprised and amazed at the strength of the Lebanese community. And I think these men and civilians that were killed and injured and maimed in that attack will always be there as human witnesses to what happened to Lebanon. And they really emerged as very strong and perseverant. We heard a lot of them speak. And I trust that it is not the first time that this happens, and this really empowered the national solidarity feeling and regathered support around Hezbollah, and thus another failure for the Israelis.
Thank you for sharing that, Ghadi. That's so powerful. And obviously, we're still reeling from those attacks that have been happening this week. And just wanted to return to something you've been speaking about, which is the US's role in all of this, because I think it is very important to emphasize that Israel wouldn't be in any position to carry out its attacks on Palestine or elsewhere in the region, actually, without the full political and military support of the United States. Could you talk us through the dynamic between US imperialism and Israel, and what are the US's interests in this region?
I personally never understood who came first, the hen or the egg. You know, I don't know if the American hegemony bred Israel or if the Zionist entity is really bullying America into that kind of support. Because in the recent war, we found that really the Zionist lobby pays people, pays congressmen, pays legislators in the United States of America. So I don't know who's more powerful at that point, you know? But if we want to go to the logic of it, I think Israel is the actual operative of the American hegemony in West Asia. The presence of Israel as a bully, as an empowered, weaponized, radical society. I don't think it's right to call it a society. It's a collection of people from around the world. They're not even a society. So it's like a missionary, radical, brainwashed, weaponized group of people in the Middle East. Their presence bullies the region so that the American interests go as wish. For example, the weapon sales to the Arab Gulf, the bullying of the Americans and how much they get empowered in oil. We are the richest region in oil and in gas. We have 60% of the world's trade passing through our waters here, the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, the Arabian, the Persian Gulf. The presence of Israel is the only reason why Americans can do and shake up and talk every decade or so, come and say, we want to draw a new Middle East. Had there not been this colony in the Middle East or in West Asia, what kind of new Middle East would the Americans be empowered to build? If this piece of land after World War II was not dissected by the colonial powers, if Greater or the natural Syria that stretched from northern Syria to southern Palestine to Iraq in the east, this is a piece of land that was governed together during the Ottoman times. If this was still one solid nation, how can the Americans rule them? So this was dissected to be conquered, and the Zionist entity is the only and the greatest way to remain in power for all these colonizers, for all these imperialists, if you call them imperialist powers. But I think the Americans are even changing. And when you lose one war, every decade they have a lost war. I think there has to be a generation in the American policymakers who learned from Iraq, who learned from Afghanistan. I suppose they have to start looking at the people native to that land, not only as equals, allow me to say, as superiors. We are stronger. We have been under billion-dollar funded wars for decades now, and maybe for more than a century. And we still were able to educate ourselves enough to articulate our struggles, to write books, to make documentaries, to show our truth to the world. We had no empowerment. On the contrary, we had all kinds of sieges. So give me one Western community that has undergone these calamities and did half as much portrayal of resilience as my people. So, it's time for the West to understand that you cannot force people of this region. You cannot force the people where God made Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. God respected us enough to give all prophets to this land. At least respect us,
Yeah, US hegemony, as you were saying, I think some people would even say that perhaps the US are the most propagandized people in the world. So maybe they're unable to see what you're saying. But for the US, I think they have stated over and over again that China is the greatest challenge to their hegemony. What is your perspective on China's position and the role that China plays in relation to what's happening in Gaza? To give a little context to our audience, since October 2023, China has been a consistent advocate for a permanent ceasefire in international forums and has argued that the underlying cause of what is happening in Gaza is the oppression of the Palestinians. In July 2024, China played a key role in brokering a national unity agreement amongst 14 Palestinian groups, including Hamas and Fatah. Some people feel they may not go far enough and vice versa, but in your opinion, how significant are these developments?
Nobody in the world did enough, not even us, the people who say they are in solidarity. If every person who is pro-Palestine today actually did an action, not a word, to disrupt something, at least to really boycott. If the country did boycott, somebody would have pained Israel. But of course, China's not doing enough. Russia's not doing enough. Europe is not doing enough. Nobody's doing enough if we want to look at what's actually happening, because we've been really taught and educated. If I was there during the Holocaust, people were put in gas chambers. What would have I done? Well, it's happening now. They might really actually do that. They're doing more kinds of mass slaughter, and people are not being shaken. I think China's being politically correct. It's not backing Israel for a change, but it's not really doing any kind of real actions to stop it. And I wonder at that point, China never does. I mean, it doesn't meddle in the Middle East like that. It would be a new way, but it's worth it. These tens of thousands of innocent people are worth it. And I think history is now recording who's saying what, which nation stood to whom. Yes, America thinks that China is its biggest rival and worries about China and Russia way too much. But I think in the same way that China has always been a kind of more mature party, and it has stabilized that rift, has always played it down to what's more of its interest economically and industrially. I don't think China is the kind of nation that likes to have a performance kind of fights. They prefer to manufacture their things to count their money and to keep on building strategies their own way. So I don't see that kind of fight between China and America anytime, you know?
Just on the topic of the solidarity movement and what we can all be doing. So we've witnessed, as you've been saying, the most barbarous attacks against the Palestinians over the past year. But we've also seen a really unprecedented global movement of resistance and solidarity to this US-Israeli terror. And I wondered if you could talk to the impact of this movement and also what your message would be to the peoples of the world that are standing up for Palestine. What should we be doing next?
First of all, I really want to thank you all for changing the course of history. And what we would like them to do is to do more, to at least make it not okay to express genocidal sentiments on mainstream media. I remember the times when Syria's uprising was starting, and then it was turning from an uprising into a radical Al-Qaeda-like movement. Anybody who would speak out against that would be cancelled. We had to walk on eggshells reporting what our bare eyes saw in Syria because of the mainstream media saying you were criminalizing the revolution of the humans and the beautiful people because they had a problem with Bashar al-Assad. Okay? So there is a capacity in the West to cancel people who say whatever doesn't work for their policies. What I'm asking all the people who are pro-Palestine, we have to make it not okay for professors, for media personalities, and for politicians to express genocidal sentiments, to say beep, beep, blast, what a win. This ugly comedian that is always posting about this genocide, he's like laughing at this war crime. I mean, he should be intimidated not to post his sentiment enjoying our people being slaughtered. So, everybody who's pro-Palestine on your social media platforms, in your communities, it's time to make them understand that they are Hitler supporters, that when they are making fun of killing children and using civilian technology devices, they are doing Nazi stuff. And they will be cancelled as if they stood in the Hitler camp while he was putting people in gas chambers. Because this is equivalent to what Benjamin Netanyahu is doing. People have to understand. And if they don't want to understand, they have to feel ashamed to say it. And with time, they will understand where they were brainwashed to stand. Because I don't think the human nature is pro-genocide. I think they're brainwashed, all of them. And they're filled with hatred and fear and Islamophobia most of the times. They can't even say, I mean, I see it on Twitter. I write some tweet stating facts, and they put for me like memes of people in niqab. I'm a Christian Maronite, for God's sake. I mean, they can't even see through my name. My name is like the Pope. I'm named Francis. You cannot really mistake that name. You know, the Pope is named Francis. I cannot be wearing niqab. So they are filled with Islamophobia. They don't even take a second to read my name. So I don't think they hate life like that. They're brainwashed like that. So our job as people who are pro-Palestine, who are pro-humanity in the West, I'm not asking you to tremendously change the course of your life and lose your jobs or to attack someone or to disrupt something. No, I'm asking you to make it not okay for people in your communities to enjoy and revere the genocide of our people.
I mean, the great irony and oh gosh, the gaslighting on this subject, though, is that, of course, in the past year, we've seen a huge attempt, an often successful attempt, to silence supporters of Palestinians and censor journalists. People have lost jobs for speaking out, etc. It's kind of like what you're suggesting, but on steroids on the other side. For you personally, as a journalist working in that region, you're putting yourself, of course, I mean, I can feel from this conversation your passion, your incredible integrity. But what motivates you from keep on going, considering the danger to yourself in this time?
Well, I don't know if the frame can see this motivates you. Do you see this? Can you see this? This is a very important icon for the Palestinian cause. His name is Hanzala. He represents a 10-year-old boy that was forced outside his village in year 1948. And he said, I'm going to turn my back and I will only turn my face when I return to my village. It's a character that was invented by a Palestinian caricaturist and author. His name was Najil Ali. He's a journalist. He was assassinated year 1987. He stands for dying for what you believe in and writing and drawing your cause. So this is my idol. This has always been my idol since I started journalism. I am in journalism because it's the only way I can deal with my trauma, with my ancestral trauma, with the dehumanizing that we're subject to generation after generation. This is how I choose to fight. I don't want the world to speak on my behalf, on behalf of my community, on behalf of my country. And I do believe in my people and I do believe in our rights. And I will forever keep on writing. And if my people are being killed, I wish to be that strong of a fighter so that I'm worthy enough to be assassinated like Najil Ali. I want to scare the killers, the child killers, enough so that they don't want me alive. We want to paint them like that with our words and our drawings. And up until the people receive the justice and the liberation. Now, when I'm speaking, you tell me I'm passionate. You know how triggering the dehumanizing is? I mean, Fiona and Ileana, you know, when I'm talking now and telling you and trying to compare to gas chambers and the Holocaust, you know the feeling like you're going that low to be recognized and validated as a human worthy of life. And you've been doing that all your life. It's too painful and it's too triggering and it's not justifiable. Why does the world, the whole world, know a name of a woman called Mahsa Amini? We don't know her face still. We don't really know the whole story. Only because the world wants to break down the Iranian regime. Why are all my women and sisters and fellow countrymen and people and family not worthy to be remembered? Why are we taking out body parts from under the rubble? Why are we seeing beheaded children? Why is the world normalizing our slaughter like that? This is very triggering. For people in this land, you have only limited options, ladies. It's either you fight, you go to that extreme. It's either you go, you carry weapons and you actually fight. And this is a big amount of our society that chose to fight for years now. Or you surrender and you say, they're going to win everything. Let me just shut up and not be vocal. Or you just stand your ground and refuse to let someone speak on your behalf. This is what I'm doing. I'm not using arms. I'm just in journalism, reporting, documenting to say the whole story that the mainstream media is telling us is not correct. And it only happens enough that when you are really honest, people see that through and you get opportunities out of the blue. I never understood or planned that I would end up speaking to people from the other side of the world about my land and my cause like I am doing right now. I only started in expressing the anger in our little society, but now the whole world is looking at us. I mean, 18 years into journalism, I think now there's a big amount of people around the world who's listening to our stories, who's reading our articles, who's seeing our videos. And I think we have all been a part of the collective awareness and enlightenment about Palestine. And this is why, hopefully, and I'm filled with faith and belief that we will live to see that liberation tangible in our lives and we will see Palestine liberated, hopefully.
Well, you know what they say, the pen is mightier than the sword. And I guess we'll have to update that for the 21st century and conclude video. But I mean, I think with what we've seen in the past 12 months, even with the billions and billions, not just in weapons, but in manufacturing a narrative and the mainstream media, what has been so powerful is, voices from Palestine and the region like yourself have actually defeated that narrative. Israel and the US have lost the battle for global opinion, I would say. But what's been really important about this conversation, is getting that insights from the region. And what would you recommend for our listeners if they want to have more of a deep dive into, the history of the region or what's happening today? Like, what would you recommend people either read, watch, or listen to get more informed about the Palestinian national liberation struggle and the wider struggle in the region?
Well, I start with a book that I have here I'm reading. It's called The Origins of Christian Zionism by Donald Lewis. It's a Cambridge book. I advise you to read Israel, The Threat from Within. It's not new. It's a book by Oxford, a columnist in The Economist wrote it. He's a Jewish writer. It's very important to see how Israel will end itself. There are two books on Palestinian history by Edward Said that are the ABC of understanding. You can check them. They're very well known. I don't want to say the title incorrectly. And I think in general, in videos and podcasts today, I think I really salute all the sisters and brothers from the global north, you girls from Europe, all the people who are in the left and the center and their communities who have their social media platforms and YouTube channels and Rumble and StreamYard and all these things that they're using and utilizing. I think I would really advise people to keep on following Dimitri Laskaris from Greece, you ladies, Double Down News, TRT World. I'd really advise to follow the action of the activists inside these communities. They are really delivering the facts. There's breakthrough news in America. There's our sister Rania Khalid. She's Lebanese American as well. I think these people are always giving you the different narrative. And yesterday I was with Danny Hayfong. Also, he gives a different narrative. If you go through your communities, you'll always find someone who's not loved by the mainstream media, who's trying to be shut down by Meta and by social media platforms. Wherever you see these kinds of people, you go and follow them because they're probably saying the truth. And you know, George Orwell says that journalism is printing things that people don't want printed out. So the real journalists are the ones being attacked, cancelled, and bullied right now around the world.
Very, very well said, Ghadi. And we're just so honoured that you took the time to join us today. We know the situation is very tense where you are, but we really appreciate the time to share with our audience all of your insights. And we really hope we can have you on again sometime. And thanks very much for the praise of our show as well. Ileana, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, just hopefully the next time we have you on, it'll be good news. If that's,
I know this is a little bit weird. I want you to be really happy. And yes, you will have good news because the course of the history is changing. We are in pain, yes, but I want you to see that we are the only people who are teaching these baby killers a lesson. And we're not surrendering and we're fighting back. And the good news is that soon enough, we will force the war criminal Netanyahu to stop the war in Gaza and to retreat back to his own. I'm like full of belief. Don't feel bad for us. Cheer us on. That's it.
Thank you. We definitely cheer you on.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you. Bye.
And just finally, if you've enjoyed the show, please do like and subscribe to help with the algorithm. And see you next time, Ghadi. Thanks so much.
Thank you.